Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Grand Theft Hamlet.
Welcome to the Filmcast review of Grand Theft Hamlet, which is streaming right now on Mubi. I want to say up top, by the way, there's not going to be a spoiler section for this one. You should assume we're going to spoil the whole thing right from the top because there's not that much of a plot in this.
Hamlet dies.
What? Jeff, not cool, man. Not cool.
Except now it's in Grand Theft Auto. Whoa.
Yeah. It's January 2021. The UK has just entered its third lockdown, and all theaters, that's theaters with a TRES at the end of it, remain closed. For actors Sam and Mark, the future looks bleak. As the pandemic drags on, Mark, who lives alone and is increasingly socially isolated, while Sam is panicking about how he is going to support his family, agreed to stage a production of Hamlet in Grand Theft Auto Online. Jeff Kanata, I'm going to start with you today. You host a video game podcast called DLC. I mean, I thought this movie would be a great intersection of all of our interests. Drama, video games, technology, COVID.
Shakespeare.
Shakespeare. Jeff Kanata, I am so curious. What did you make of this documentary / animated film, Grand Theft Hamlet?
Well, Dave, I guess you could say what I thought of Grand Theft Hamlet. And let me just say right up top, Hamlet Auto is right there.
It's true. Yep.
Grand Theft Hamlet, come on, is best summed up in the form of a limerick. Commitment to which I aspire, and some moments I truly admire. But you're asking me, should it be or not be? I wish its wanted level was higher.
Huh. Interesting.
Well played.
I have a lot of thoughts about this movie, and a lot of them are conflicting. I thought going in that this literally was just going to be the production of Hamlet in Grand Theft Auto. It is not that.
Yeah.
This is a documentary about that process, which ultimately is an interesting endeavor in that it brought me back to what it was like during COVID, how quickly I forget, and I might even say we forget the global.
That's a survival mechanism to just forget the most traumatizing things we go through. Yeah,
indeed. But man, I do think this movie would have hit harder if it had come out and the pandemic was still happening. Right. Having some distance from it, I had to be brought back into the experience of what that despair. I mean, there's different kind of despair now, but that sort of that isolation and that just need for human connection that we all had at that time, it's easily forgotten. And I think you're right back in it with this documentary, and that these guys just want some way to hang out with each other and do their art, and their art is starved because there's no way to do it when you can't be in the same room as another person. So there's like this kind of lovely element of that, and their struggle and their sort of openness about that is compelling. But I will say right at the top, I cried during this movie. There's a sequence when one of the actors is attempting to do the to be or not to be speech a number of times in a number of different locations around Grand Theft Auto, and is constantly interrupted. And it's just sort of the chaos of humanity, unleashed, unbridled humanity that is on display in Grand Theft Auto all the time. The chaos that game engenders for fun, right? You just can run up and shoot things and blow things up, and it's wacky, and that's the draw. But in the context of somebody like trying to do something that they actually care about in the midst of that, I found to be really, really beautiful and evocative, right? It is. It struck a chord in me, that metaphor of I'm trying to say so, and I want people to kind of listen to me and hear this. And people are just like, there's one point where someone comes up and you just hear their microphone and they just seem to be screaming
right,
and
right.
running around and shooting things while he's like, you know, whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings.
Well, first you have to start by saying, please don't shoot me, please don't shoot me, please don't shoot me. Like he's trying to like do a Hamlet monologue. He's like, please don't shoot me, please don't shoot me, just listen, don't shoot me, don't shoot me, please don't shoot me, please don't shoot me, please don't shoot me.
Yeah.
You know, like
so in that moment, like I really was brought to tears. It was beautiful. So this movie is not without its moments. That said, I have a hard time recommending it to anybody because I don't necessarily think there's much to it. I wish, from a purely technical level, I don't think this is a particularly well executed stab. I think part of the charm of Grand Theft Hamlet is that here are relative newbies to this medium, machinima, if you want to call it that, or you know, a very well-established thing that the three of us are very familiar with, but it doesn't seem like the people who made this movie are, right? This is a thing that has been going on for decades, right?
Yeah.
Red versus Blue, Devindra reference at the top is probably the poster child for machinima, started it all, right? But, you know, there was literally a company called Machinima that I pitched shows to many times and worked for a couple of times. It no longer exists, but like this was a thing in the early 2000s, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that these guys seem to be completely unaware of that, I think shows in that they kind of don't understand the tools that they're working with. And again, there's a charm in that, but there's also like a minimum requirement that I don't think this movie meets, right?
Yeah.
The audio is just atrocious.
Yes.
Just atrocious. And you could say, oh, yeah, well, they're using their mics. They're just video gamers using their mics. Okay, but you
don't have to. You don't have to.
You decided to make a movie. Right?
Yeah.
You decided to make this into a movie.
Yeah.
And so let's hit the minimum bar for that, right? The movie is about speaking the speech, I pray you, as it's written, right? So it is literally Hamlet has instructions in the play for how to do it. You know, let us go trippingly on the tongue, motherfuckers. Let's do this. And we need to hear it, right? We need to hear this movie would be infinitely better if I could hear the words better, right?
Yeah.
And I get it. What we're doing here is we're all on our little gaming headsets that are crap, and we're all speaking over VoIP, which is crap. And one person's just recording it on their end, which is crap. But guess what? You decided to make a movie. Let's maybe think about that. And I know it was during COVID. Okay, lots of excuses, but
you can get local audio still. Yeah.
The end result here in 2025 is not great, right? And I think technically not great. Yeah. And you know, it's become very in vogue on YouTube, for example, for people to just have sort of audio experiences, they're monologuing about whatever issue it is, and just put up video game footage in front of that is disassociated completely. Right? A lot of people do that. A lot of video game channels, they'll just show stuff on the YouTube channel, but really what it is we're talking. Right?
Yeah.
That's basically what this movie is. There are there are moments here and there in the movie where the visuals are important, but for the most part, they're not. And that, I believe, is a missed opportunity. The moments when it does sync up, like the aforementioned moment with To Be or Not To Be, where they're doing these really beautiful things of seeing the sort of like this representations of humanity inside Grand Theft Auto, juxtaposed with these beautiful words from Shakespeare.
I love that they reference Baz Luhrmann to like the Baz Luhrmann Romeo and Juliet a little bit. And I was like, yeah, that is actually probably how you do it. I know how much you love that, Jeff.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing to see like NPCs staring blankly at the screen where he's talking about, you know, what it is to be human and the beauty of humanity. Like that, there's something there, but the movie, I don't think understands it enough or leans into it enough. I think it really is a missed opportunity. And the beautiful parts of it, of which there are some, and a lot of the beauty is just people getting together to do a thing.
Yeah.
Which is a great thing, especially during COVID. Like, I understand that. And there's a rah, let's all do this. But I don't think this movie achieves what, for example, Ghostlight achieves or Sing Sing achieves. And there's such recent examples that I would send people to those movies far before I'd ever send them to this one. This one, I would love to get into more of a discussion of like this kind of new medium, not new, as we said, machinima has been around for a long time, but like what this movie sort of hints at the potential of. But I've been talking a long time. I want to hear what you guys think. But ultimately, for me, this movie is more of a miss than a hit, even if the hit parts are genuinely beautiful.
I'll just say, and I want to hear what Devindra has to say, but just real quick, I do want to say David Chen, disagree with you about there is a genre of YouTube videos that's like meaningless B-roll over person talking. I've seen it. I've seen videos like that. I know what you're talking about.
More on TikTok now too, but yeah.
I don't agree that is what this movie is. I think like most of the time, 70 to 80% of the time, the B-roll that we're seeing or the stuff we're seeing is meaningful. It is attached to kind of what is being spoken. And now whether that worked for you is a different question. But like in my opinion, I found it to be mostly very poignant when it came to like the footage that they were showing.
I'm glad you feel that way. I think that if I had just heard this as a podcast, as an audio experience, most of it would be landed on me exactly the same way.
Yeah, I don't agree, but we have different experiences. Devindra Hardawar, your thoughts on Grand Theft Hamlet?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting experiment, but I kind of come down with where you are, Jeff. Like I'm looking at this thinking you could go a little deeper, you could do a little more. Like I've seen YouTube videos, where I think the creators are more inventive with using the ideas of cinema, or at least what they're exploring, or even using footage and things from within games. 2 years ago, I talked about this movie called We Met in Virtual Reality, which was filmed entirely in VR chat. And I think about that movie every day. I think that movie's worth watching, by the way. It's on Max right now. And that was also filmed amid COVID, was about human relationships in COVID, but I think did a better job of using that medium of VR to craft something truly cinematic. And I don't feel like the folks behind this really understood like how you could do that in Grand Theft Auto Online. Like there are some great shots and occasionally like that one great sequence when it comes to editing. But I think overall it feels like a missed opportunity. And what they're going through, what these creators are going through, is like the isolation of being in COVID, what everybody was going through. I think it is poignant, and I think we can all remember being there and the trouble we all had to deal with it. But I don't feel like this. I felt like we could have seen more of the actual performance. Like I was expecting more of that. Doesn't even need to be like Sing Sing or Ghostlight levels, but like We Met in Virtual Reality really painted a picture of who those people are, how they're actually connected in virtual reality, how they're actually forming meaningful relationships and things. There's a bit of that in here, but I just feel like it's kind of messy. So I did not love this movie, but it is a really cool exercise. It's cool to see somebody actually made something within Grand Theft Auto Online.
Well, folks, a little behind the scenes, the selection of which movie review is probably the most democratic thing that occurs on this podcast, which is to say, like, we all need to agree, or it's at the when there's like disagreement, it's majority rules. But that said, this movie was my idea. I brought this to the table. I'm sorry you guys didn't love it. But I really appreciate you guys checking it out. I will say I loved it. I thought it was awesome. And I agree with all the criticism you guys have. Technically, it is offensively terrible to me. You're talking to somebody who will often, like David Chen, in the past, I have purchased microphones for guests to keep because they're going to be on this podcast one time for 30 minutes. The idea that they could not do that for all the people in this movie is offensive to me. And so
or at least for the leads too. Like,
yeah, at least for the leads. Come on, use a Discord server for the love of God. Don't
record your audio locally. You could do it. Yes, it's not hard.
You could do it. So I'm upset that like they didn't give a shit about that. Because technically it's very sad, as Jeff said. But I think this documentary is about so many things, or it touches on so many things that are important to me and things that I think about. Number one, it does take place during COVID, and it does bring us back to this time when like some people were extremely isolated, and the only way we had to connect with each other was these things that we did online sometimes. And in that regard, I think it is actually a very valuable historical document. We see so little of COVID brought up in popular culture at all, and if it is, it's often annoying or offensive. And this is an instance in which I felt it was like, oh, this is actually a very valuable window into what it felt like at the time, that I think very little other art does a good job of evoking. Number two, I don't know about you guys. I don't hear this coming from you guys, but like, I just think that the world they created in Grand Theft Auto 5 was really beautiful. Like, I just think it's like, there's multiple times where I'm watching this movie, I'm like, holy crap, like, somebody put thought into building this scene this beach that we're on, this vista that we're looking at. You know, like somebody.
Yeah, they find a theater, like an amphitheater. Like there's beautiful game design in there. Yeah,
it's the Hollywood Bowl, basically.
It's the Hollywood Bowl, a place I worked at for 7 years of my life. It's a wild moment when they just wander into it and they're like, "What's this?" And I was like, "Well, that's on Highland."
And it's called the Vinewood Bowl in the game, but and there's just so many moments where I'm like, you know, the sun setting. Grand Theft Auto 5 is like, can occasionally be breathtakingly beautiful, and I just was seized with an appreciation of that. You know, just
it is amazing what that game engine can do. Yes, for sure.
Yeah,
I think that's one of the cool takeaways of this movie is as these game worlds get more detailed, more expansive, more varied. You know, they become a tapestry upon which art can be made. And I think that's a really interesting thing. I don't think this one was particularly well executed. And that's the bummer, is that I know there are people out there right now using Grand Theft Auto to make incredibly beautiful works of art, right? There's people all over YouTube you can find that have done things with the engine. And I think these creators, for all their good intentions and lovely commitment to the process, just didn't even investigate the tools, right? Or if they did, we don't get any insight into it, right? There's a moment at the end where we sort of are, fast forwarded through the actual production that they do. How did they change locations? Did they ask the audience to wait as all the character models went to a new location? Like what? We don't even get the sort of nuts and bolts of how this was accomplished. And I think that's a loss as well.
Yeah, that's fair. And I don't disagree with that, Jeff. But the other component is Shakespeare, right? Like that there are characters who deliver the monologues from Hamlet, and they essentially draw parallels between the characters in Hamlet and what they're going through in their own lives right now. And I found that to be very poignant, connected with my first point about COVID and how like COVID was extremely isolating and made lots of people contemplate what is the meaning of life? Why are we doing any of this stuff? And that's stuff that Hamlet also contemplates. And yeah, like really opening up, like made me think about what the possibilities are in terms of machinima. It's been a long time since I've watched any machinima, and so this is the first piece. For those who don't know, machinima is basically like art that's made within the confines of a game, like short films or movies made within a game engine. And it made me wonder, like, oh wow, this is like really close to something that's actually like pretty extraordinary. I don't think it is quite there yet because of the limitations of the game that they're playing in, but it's like you can imagine in a couple of generations how one day this might be more mainstream, doing stuff like this, right?
Well, I think what Jeff is pointing to, though, is like I do think people are already doing this. Like the people live streaming games right now, there are people doing live role playing in Grand Theft Auto Online, also Red Dead Online, and everything. And when they cut those clips together, like they're telling compelling stories, compelling narratives. They're not like framing it like I am making a movie, but they are just putting this stuff out there on YouTube, and a lot of them are good, even if it's just a short clip. Yeah,
that's fair.
So it's
that's fair.
I think it's actually been normalized. It's just not with the trappings of like, we've made a motion picture basically.
Right.
Did you guys, either of you guys see Evelyn?
Yes.
Didn't you talk about it? Yeah.
Jeff, I purchased
Yes.
your ticket for Evelyn.
Yes. He
Oh, that's
recommended
right.
it to you. Yep.
Yeah,
Thanks
fair
for
enough.
remembering that. Appreciate that.
So you
Anyway.
have seen it.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, I have.
And you liked it.
I saw Evelyn at Sundance. I said, Jeff, I will
Yeah.
buy you a ticket to see this
I
movie.
think the machinima stuff in Evelyn is better handled. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously they futz with it more.
Well,
in
yeah,
that
I think they did like their own
animation.
CG.
And stuff.
Yeah, they did their own animation. They didn't just rely on the.
But
in-game
they also,
engine.
I don't know. It's just a bummer that the scrappiness of this is part of the draw.
Yeah,
But it also makes it hard to watch. I think
Mhm,
it's not. It does. I don't think a random person who doesn't play video games off the street would watch this movie and go, "Wow, you can really make a movie in GTA."
I actually disagree, Jeff. I think it's the opposite. I think like you are so familiar with like what's possible. You know, like I'm like less into the world than you are, and I come to this and I'm like, it's funny when like I'm still like, oh haha, it's funny when someone like storms in and like kills them all because it's but like I understand if you've seen that a billion times, you're over it, right? So I actually think like it's almost parts of it might appeal more to like randos on street who don't know about this world. You know what I'm saying?
Maybe,
like,
but they could have actually shot this like a movie.
Yeah.
You can you don't have to just use the straight stream. Like, I mean, there's messages popping up on the screen constantly that have nothing to do with what's actually happening.
Yeah, all the notifications. Yeah.
That, which is all fine. Like let it be the actual game, but they're using just, ostensibly they have a director.
Yeah, a documentary filmmaker who's like
who's POV, like she's in first person mode,
Yeah.
and her POV, and she's trying to line up shots, but there's no real editing, right? There's no actual, like they could have presented a scene from Shakespeare that looked like you shot this with digital actors.
Reverse shot, like standard thing, but they didn't really do anything. Yeah.
No attempt at that, right?
Yeah.
It is literally like just let's record our stream and try to get this to happen. And it's like, okay, that's cool. And there could be parts of this documentary that were showing you the BTS, right? The behind the scenes of how this was all done.
Yeah.
But the end result, the end result was just a Twitch stream where people logged onto their Twitch stream and saw them do Shakespeare, like Shakespeare in the Park, except the park is Grand Theft Auto, right? This though is a movie. This is a movie, so make it a movie. Like it just feels like they didn't even investigate what people are doing with these tools because people are showing them how. Like you could do it, and it would have been even more impressive. I think it would have been really gobsmacking to see it that way. But the way that they show it in this movie is just messy and clunky and amateurish. And again, there's a certain charm to that, but I think the movie would have been a much better experience if they had not done it that way.
Yeah. I join you guys in agreeing that like I'm surprised at how little of the actual production was shown. Like it's like less than 10 minutes of runtime, which I was a little bit disappointed by, given that the actual production is 3+ hours long. But I got a lot out of it. I mean, there was a scene when he's I think you alluded to this, Jeff, where he's giving the Hamlet speech of like, what a piece of work is man, right? And there's a close up of an NPC's face. That's the thing that like the NPCs are like, I found them to be surprisingly poignant throughout, because basically if you go to Grand Theft Auto, there's like all these NPCs that are around just kind of doing like everyday activities, and it's like, what a piece of work is man, and then you're seeing this NPC and like having a close up on his eyes, and it's like there's a kind of vacancy there, right? But also like you can see how this like reasonably approximates human behavior, and it like made me contemplate like the boundaries of what a NPC is versus what a human in the game is versus what a human in real life is, and there's many such moments.
I wish there'd been more of that. Like there's moments where they just show a shot of like the garbage in a corner of this virtual world. Like some artist put garbage in Grand Theft Auto to make it, and so that Magritte, this is not a pipe, this is not the real world, but this is what an artist had to make to approximate. They're made virtual garbage to approximate the real garbage in the real world to make it feel real. And there's something very profound about that. And just like in a Koyaanisqatsi, like just show it to you way, it's really powerful. But this movie just doesn't lean into that at all.
I disagree completely. I thought the movie was mostly what you just said. Like I thought it was like 70 to 80% that.
I almost wonder, like I'm kind of like mentally judging this versus the stuff we see from Rockstar themselves too. Like I remember being very excited about Grand Theft Auto trailers because those folks always know how to shoot their games and they do it very cinematically too. Like, and I'm like,
very
that
good point.
stuff. I got so excited. The Grand Theft Auto 4 trailer, the 5 was pretty good, and we're waiting for the next one right now. The way they use music, the way they cut scenes together, like it was so dramatic. And I think for something that is about Shakespeare, there's like very little drama here other than, the personal dramas that people are dealing with.
Well, I'm sorry you guys didn't get a lot out of it. It
was worth watching.
Didn't love the movie, but it was an interesting experiment, and I think it's super valuable as a movie, and I loved it. It made me just kind of contemplate the nature of existence and loneliness and drama and Shakespeare and all these things. So appreciate you guys, joining me for this journey and trying this one out. But the movie is Grand Theft Hamlet. It is available right now on Mubi. And at the end of the day, it is impressive that despite how sloppy it was technically, Sam Crane and Pinny Grylls made a movie. Thank you so much for watching this video of the Filmcast. Check out these other videos that we have available, and be sure to hit like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to get other videos from us in the future.
You can also go to thefilmcast.com to catch all of our audio podcast versions of all of our episodes.
And support this podcast at patreon.com/filmpodcast, where you can sign up for ad-free episodes and exclusive After Darks.
Thanks so much to everyone who makes the Filmcast possible.